Boys and girls, we are back to reading about If You Travel West in a Covered Wagon. And I forgot to say yesterday, this was written by Ellen Levine and illustrated by Elroy Freen. We're learning some real facts. We're taking an imaginary tour out to Oregon on a wagon train, which is not really a train. It's a bunch of wagons going together, traveling to be safe together. Thank you, Scholastic, for letting us read your book. What was a wagon train? A wagon train was a group of covered wagons that went together on the long trip west. The wagons would travel in a single line so that from a distance they looked like a slow-moving train. If the trail was wide enough, they would sometimes spread out to get away from each other's dust. At night, the wagons would form a big circle with the front of one wagon facing the back of one other. Children would often play inside the wagon circle after dinner and just before bedtime. And if you look closely here, you can see that's how they would circle around for safety at night. Did anybody lead the wagon train? Yes. When pioneers gathered the wagons together at the start of the trip, they elected a leader. This leader or captain would blow the horn or whistle to wake everybody up in the morning. He was also the one who decided when you would stop for lunch and at the end of the day. The captain with a few others would often ride a little in front of the wagon train to see what was ahead on the trail. Then they would ride up and down the wagon line to make sure that everything was okay. Usually there was a council of about 6 to 10 people who would meet at night with the captain to talk about how the trip was going. Each person would report on different problems. A wagon wheel had broken and the family needed someone to help make a new one. Or somebody's flour barrel had gotten all wet and muddy crossing the river, and the family needed to get some flour from anyone who could spare a little. Or maybe a group of men had to be organized for the next day's buffalo hunt. The captain and the council would plan who would stand guard at night to protect the animals and warn the people if there was anything wrong. What was a trail guide? Some wagon trains hired trail guides. They were people who had made the trip before and knew the way. Usually they had been fur trappers and traders out west for many years. When they came back to the east, they had special knowledge that was very helpful to the pioneers. The guides would know the best places to cross the rivers. They knew how far you had traveled and how much more you had to go. And they taught the pioneers some of the tricks of the trail, which you can read about later on in this book. Some of the guides even wrote books about how to travel west. This meant that the captain and the council of a wagon train could study a guidebook and learn about the best way to go. One of the most famous guides was a man named Dr. Marcus Whitman. He was a doctor and a missionary. He and his wife Narcissa built a home in the Oregon Territory. Dr. Whitman was a trail guide for the first big wagon train to go to Oregon in 1843. It was made up of 120 wagons. Because he had made the trip before, he was very helpful to the pioneers who were going for the first time. Dr. Whitman believed that the wagons could go over the mountains in Oregon. No covered wagons had ever gone across those mountains before, but the pioneers trusted Dr. Whitman, and they made it. And next time, we will continue on and find out what kinds of people traveled west.